the purchasing of artwork, and there isn't anyone that is filtering that. It is a totally organic process. And for the NFT space, I think that this is ultimately supremely exciting, because it is the space itself that is forming its top artists. And it is the space itself that is defining what the work is that is important. And I think, again, like, we've entered into this kind of democratic phase in art that is very necessary.
Matt, what's happening, man? How are you feeling?
I'm doing great, Sam. Another day in the NFT space. I feel like my head's moving a mile a minute. Can't complain.
There we go. Who we got lined up?
We have Ronnie Pirovino, super respected art collector, curator, appraiser. He was the one who partnered with Christie's on that Trespassing exhibit and auction that was recently featured there, featuring some contemporary artists alongside some NFT native artists. He's also known for having one of the biggest Kaws collections in the world, which has been featured at places from Christie's to ComplexCon. What are you excited about, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I love this conversation. I think he's very experienced in the art world, and even though he studied art history in Northwestern, has definitely curated exhibitions at Christie's, he's not necessarily conditioned by how the traditional art world moves, even through his collections with Kaws and the whole ethos of the Trespassing exhibit, which is how there's kind of what's the new generation of art, be it Kaws, Murakami, Banksy, or be it NFTs, all of which he had in his Trespassing exhibit. So I think he brings some incredibly valuable perspective, having seen how artists have gone from kind of emerging artists up to the forefront in the traditional art world, and then also what's in store for NFTs. And I think too, I have to say, I was like so inspired seeing the Trespassing exhibit at Christie's, just seeing Kaws and Murakami next to Fuck Render and Victor Mascara, right? Like it's just fascinating to see the convergence of cultures that's happening. I think he also, as the chief curator at LGND.art, you can check out their website, LGND.art. They're partnering and curating an exhibit at the upcoming ComplexCon, right? And ComplexCon is obviously a big cultural moment in the kind of culture that touches. So I think very excited to see what's in store there. Grateful he was able to share a little bit about what's coming up in this episode. But I think he's got tons of great perspective as to what drives meaningful growth and prosperity in this space, and what the future really has in store for artists, collectors, communities, the whole nine. So I'm really grateful to have had Ronnie on. If you haven't already, want to encourage you guys to sign up for our newsletter. Every week, we simplify the NFT market into actual insights and takeaways for you. So that's just nftnow.com. But without any further ado, Ronnie Pirovino. Ronnie, what's happening, man? Welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I appreciate it very much. Great day in Denver. I just moved here. I'm loving it. And looking forward to, kind of closing out this year really strong.
Yeah, love that for sure. In that vein, I'm curious, Ronnie, because I know you weren't you did study art history back in the day at Northwestern, and then you kind of went more in the digital media and digital advertising route, and then have really since then kind of turned art into not just a hobby, but into very much a full-time thing. Can you talk a little bit through your journey of getting into the art world, and then from even within the art world into NFTs?
Absolutely. So my experience at Northwestern was actually really interesting, because it was at a time when the internet was really beginning. It's really at the time, in the late 90s, when everything was new. Online was this, the online experience was this new opportunity to communicate and to network, and so that was always fascinating for me. And my degree's in communications, so I was always interested in graphic design and art and advertising and marketing. And so as my career unfolded, I was really kind of taking a path into advertising. And advertising, to me, in a lot of ways, is an incredible training ground for art, because you you have to understand psychology, and you have to understand how things are appealing to people and how images really work. And that experience really informed my path into art, because I got into collecting art. And collecting art, as opposed to any other facet in the art game, collecting art is something that forces you to develop very quickly, because you're spending money and you are literally putting yourself on the line when you're buying things that hopefully will appreciate in value. That isn't necessarily the goal, but once you start to put certain amount of money into the collecting pursuit, it does become relevant, and it really becomes a concern. So my experience in collecting really spanned into over a decade, and I was really focused in on Kaws. So what is really interesting about my experience is that as I was on the message boards in the early 2000s, and really learning about collecting and really learning about what this burgeoning scene was that involved Kaws and Banksy and other artists that were really doing things that were different than what we'd seen in the traditional gallery space. This was really exciting to me, and I learned a lot. And I decided early on to focus in on Kaws as my primary sort of subject to collect, so to speak. I was never really interested in who Kaws was per se, but that's a different story. I was really completely enamored by the work, and coming from advertising, it hit me immediately, because his primary thesis at the time was really disrupting advertising, disrupting the images that brands were putting out there. And this was, again, really fascinating to me. And so when I saw the toys, I really kind of fell head over heels, and through the next number of years, really up until really from the early 2000s till around 2015 or so, I had a very, very singular focus on Kaws. And I was able to build a collection, to really create a collection for myself that no one has been able to match. And I don't think that it'll ever exist in the way that it did at that time. In fact, it's funny because there is a set of photos on Hypebeast from my collection that we took in July of 2011 that still today, blow people's minds, and they still float out there. And I still get people asking me, do you still live in this loft? And I was like, nah, that was before my kids. That was another stage. I did have the opportunity, to really present it all together. And really after I had kind of taken that pursuit to almost the maximum degree that I could, I decided that it was time for a change, that it was time to challenge myself in a whole new way. Because to a degree, the way that Kaws rose and the way that I was so singularly focused on his work, it was such a symbiosis. And then it was wild how I had been this kind of evangelist for his work. But then I decided that I needed to take my collection in a new direction that was much more personal, that was much more of a complex statement, that would be much more of a narrative as opposed to kind of like a display of one artist's work per se. And so around 2015, I redirected my collection. And that's pretty much around the time when I jumped into art full time. And I left my career in advertising. And since around 2015, I've really been focused on on projects in art, and projects that have not been necessarily planned. I kind of have the ability to sit and think about things that I really am interested in, want to do, and aim for that, and move in that direction. And really, when NFTs really emerged last year, it was at the most really opportune time, because I was sitting there thinking, where is art going? You know, during the pandemic, where is all this going to lead us? What kind of work is going to be produced by artists during this time? Where is art going? And so when the NFT became this medium that really took a hold of the culture, I mean, even SNL has had, you know, their digital shorts addressing NFTs. And so you have to think that this medium has made an incredible impact on our culture. It really has almost given me a new life, a new direction, a new purpose, because art to me is ultimately creative expression. And it doesn't matter what medium, it doesn't matter the materials, the concept, the ideas, the images, the expression, the feeling, that's what matters. And so I see NFTs as advancing everything forward in so many different ways, including unlocking the ability for an artist to truly have a conversation with the collector in so many dynamic ways that it's truly revolutionary and spectacular. Because I think artists, to a great degree, have had a relationship with their audience that has never been facilitated in a communication, in a dialogue, in a way that the work is almost informed by the communication itself and the response that the artist is getting, and so on and so forth. So NFTs, to me, I think, are just the most exciting medium. They have ushered in the most exciting moment. And I think that this is really a special time, because art is no longer really being tightly gripped by a certain group of people. It is now a global community. NFTs have made art accessible to so many more people. And this is important, because art needs to convert people who are simply interested to really collecting it and appreciating it. And art needs custodians. Art needs collectors. Art needs to continue to grow in all sorts of ways. And NFTs have truly provided this new path. And it's a new path for me as well.
Man, I could not agree more, especially, you know, it really resonates. You're talking about finding a newfound passion and new energy and excitement around this. I feel that myself. I know Sam feels the same. You know, I think, you know, I love how you described when being an early supporter of Kaws and describing what he did as disruption, because it really is. And, you know, I think that, you know, you had a really interesting perspective into his rise, being there from the beginning and seeing all that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about sort of how he went from being a bit of an outsider in the art world to being at the forefront, and what, you know, artists in the NFT space could learn from his example, because disruption is what's happening on this, you know, front as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Kaws, what he did masterfully, and I believe he's a genius. I love his work, although I don't collect it like I once did. However, I remain ultimately reverent and ultimately appreciative of how his work fits into my personal journey into art. Kaws came at a moment when the internet was really kindling. He came at a moment when art started to be shared on the internet, and people started to talk about it on the internet. All of these things had not happened before. So Kaws grew so quickly because he was one of the early examples of work that traveled quickly and very effectively on the internet. His images were almost made for the internet. You know, they look good on a screen. You know, they're colorful. They use iconography that everyone is familiar with. So in a way, his work was timed perfectly for deployment on the internet as it grew and as people networked and communicated. And so artists today who are NFT artists, they have social media. Social media has changed the game. This element of community has changed the game. You no longer have this gatekeeping aspect where a gallery is prescribing what is good and what you should pay attention to, and ultimately what you should buy. All of that has changed. It is now the community. It is now people that are evidently searching for something and celebrating it and sharing their enthusiasm, and are able to connect to the work of the artist. I think that in terms of an artist looking to Kaws as a model, well, the model is really taking an independent approach that is not sanctioned by any authority or institution. Kaws used the street, and the internet embraced it. And an NFT artist, they can use their social media. They can harness the power that social media has to connect with the international marketplace. It's no longer about creating a website and having people go to that website and really harnessing that attention in that way. It's now so much more collaborative and so much more of a community sort of level of communication where you can use Instagram, you can use Twitter, and these communities start to form and funnel and elevate the artists that are the best in the game. And so it's almost like the world is voting through likes and through the purchasing of artwork. And there isn't anyone that is, filtering that. It is a totally organic process. And for the NFT space, I think that this is ultimately supremely exciting, because it is the space itself that is forming its top artists. And it is the space itself that is defining what the work is that is important. And I think, again, like, we've entered into this kind of democratic phase in art that is very necessary, because we had gotten into a stage where it was difficult to access art without certain relationships. It was difficult to access art without playing the politics. It was difficult to access art without, traveling to those fairs, and all these things that made that world so much more difficult to operate in. All of this has kind of just opened up, and the NFT space is ultimately going to redefine the mainstream art space. And this is something that I welcome tremendously, but I know, this is also an element that puts a great amount of fear into institutions, galleries, all of these, art players who just don't understand what's happening. And the change is happening very quickly.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, it's very exciting to be kind of on the front lines of the change. And I think it's very much ladders back to just the general ethos of being able to empower artists and unlock a new level of creative expression and community and engagement. So I think it's all for the right cause. And I think whenever there's anything innovative or that's pushing, there'll always be the kind of the more traditional powers that be that are hesitant to adopt it. But I think on the flip side too, it's like we fortunately are seeing some of these leading auction houses lean into how can they actually adopt and uplift and empower and support this new wave rather than just trying to protect it and keep a hard wall. And I think, I mean, even your exhibit, Trespassing, I think is the perfect example. And I mean, having seen it IRL, it was super amazing. I mean, seeing kind of like Kaws and Murakami and Banksy, and then right next to it, seeing Matt Dog Jones and Victor Mascara. Like for me, that definitely gave off big like it's happening vibes for NFT adoption. Seeing that some of these people that have been so culturally influential in the traditional and pop art and just general art worlds, and seeing NFTs get that same level of shine right next to it. I'd love for you just to dive a bit deeper into like the ethos of Trespassing. What inspired it, and then how'd you really kind of go about the curation and what really was the intention behind this whole collection?
I'm glad you asked that. I think that Trespassing, the name itself, kind of really communicates the spirit of innovation. And the thing is that Christie's is probably one of the oldest businesses on the planet. You know, they've been established since the 1700s. Their average, if you believe this, and it is true, if you can believe this, their average client, their average buyer is a senior citizen. They're senior citizens. That's not the future. They need to quickly evolve to embrace a whole new audience, an audience that is ultimately their future and doesn't represent a certain end to their business. This is really something that is very important for them to really embrace what's new and to redirect their business in a very nimble way into an arena that really represents the future. And people like Noah Davis have been incredible advocates within that institution. Now, Trespassing, I had the first version of it happen last year during the height of the pandemic, really, and the results were great. And so we did it again this year, and we'll do, and the results were great this year again. So we're going to do it again next year. So Trespassing is really a new sort of vehicle within Christie's, which is multifaceted in the way that it helps Christie's, but also helps the community as well, which is there is an element of brand new introduction of work and artists that on the Christie's platform that in fact no one at Christie's may even know before the sale actually takes place. And that's where I come in. I as a collector, I am very, very in tune with the dynamics of the market. I'm very in tune with artists as they are emerging because I'm interested in forming my collection with the most exciting artists that are working out there. I'm not interested in really, just kind of following someone's path. I'm interested in leading that path. And so I'm often very focused on collecting work that is like my early experience with Kaws, really kind of brand new to the world, so to speak. And so my collection is really at this point consisting of really blue chip, well-established artists like Anthony Gormley and Rashid Johnson and Jonas Wood. But I also have artists that are ultimately emerging, like some stuff behind me, Daniel Gibson and Jordy Kerwick. And these guys are much newer than anyone, that would be considered established. For instance, these two guys have pretty much never been to auction, but they may very well be in the next version of Trespassing. If someone is willing to give up that work, I am in my particular path. I tend to keep things for a number of years because I love to sort of live with the work. But then there's others who are interested in sort of keeping it moving a lot more quickly. And Trespassing is sort of this conduit where I'm in touch really with how the market is really performing, and how the interest level is rising for certain artists. So I'm able to target certain work and ask friends in my network if they're interested in participating. So the curation becomes this sort of like this conversation that takes place between myself, Christie's, and collectors who are interested in their collections sort of evolving. They may be moving from an artist that they've collected in the past couple of years, and all of a sudden they kind of realize that they're more interested in this other subject or artist, and they need to kind of be able to migrate to this other work, and an auction just becomes a way to effectively do that. And for me to curate a sale, it is really about assembling works that all kind of have a place within that narrative, within that storyline. And so putting in artists like Mad Dog, Fuck Render, Victor, Olive Allen, all these, really great based artists into the sale, Micah Johnson, they helped create this tapestry, a tapestry that is woven together. However, it is in the spirit of really innovating and doing something new within a space that is traditional as it comes. Christie's is I think more than anything in the art world a symbol for tradition. And for me to have the opportunity to kind of mix up that tradition and to come in with a Trojan horse and introduce new things and open their eyes to things that they may not have realized were kind of already happening, and they are. It's a real pleasure, and it's why we keep working together, because it's a great way for me to sort of convey my expertise, and it's a great way for them to bring in new collectors. And so far, the last two sales that we've had of Trespassing have had a tremendous amount of new registrations to their platform, and have brought in bidding and bidders that have never participated in their platform. And that's ultimately a goal that's met for me, to bring in the people that follow me and what I'm doing, and want to really kind of support this effort of building a community in a certain way that extends beyond certain boundaries. And it's really exciting, I think, for Christie's to have a project in place that the expectation is almost like, well, we don't know what we're going to get. Exactly. We don't know exactly what's going to happen here. We don't know these artists very well, if at all. It's sort of like, this very exciting kind of experiment in a way that, I get to be involved with. And I'm super honored that they have allowed me, to participate in this way, and I can tell you that I take it very seriously to push that boundary, to bring in new artists. Dot Pigeon was someone that had never had an auction record. In fact, his career is in a relatively early stage. I love his work. I love what he's doing. I wanted him to consider being a part of Trespassing, and he agreed. His gallery agreed. We presented a work that was not secondary. It was a primary work. And again, this is breaking the rules to a certain degree. But that's the world we're in now. We're not in a world where we're bound by all these rules and regulations that are old and outdated. Look, let's break new ground. Let's not be shackled by what has been the tradition. Why? Let's push all this forward. And that's really the kind of the idea.
I love that. And, it just like you said, breaking down those barriers and breaking those rules. One thing I often, find myself saying and explain to people kind of in the traditional art world is that it's not a question of physical art or digital art or NFTs. It's always going to be an and. They're always going to coexist. And I think that like Trespassing is a really great example of you bringing those worlds together in a way that makes a lot of sense. So I'd love to kind of, examine a bit, what we were talking about like kind of breaking some of these rules and breaking down these barriers. You said something really interesting earlier about how as a collector, normally there's artists are not empowered in the traditional art in market usually to communicate with you in the same way as in the NFT space. And I'd love to hear sort of your thoughts on that and what that sort of how that sort of enriches the connection between artists and collectors. And then also, I think talking about, the lack of these intermediaries, also the fact that there aren't the same gatekeepers in the NFT space.
Yeah, I think it's a new day when it comes to how an artist might conceive of their work, how an artist might imagine their work to be realized. This notion of communication, this notion of a dialogue, this notion of a conversation, this notion of direct contact with the collector, it is not for everyone, I would say, because I think that we are at a stage where all of these artists that are producing work in the NFT space have really evolved with this notion of social communication, social media being an integral part of their life. So they're not afraid to communicate with anyone. Like one of the things that I find is truly fascinating is how artists who operate in the traditional space, I don't want to use the word fearful because it's kind of like very like specific, but there is an element of, let's say, anxiety perhaps that fills an artist in sort of the traditional world when it comes to dealing with communication that everyone is going to be aware of and everyone is going to really be able to dissect and so on and so forth. They're not necessarily equipped to deal with like the level of communication that all of this is really founded on, which is very public communication, very permanent in many ways. Like we've moved beyond the message board days where You could post this like just ridiculous message and kind of walk away from it, and kind of like no one really like seeing it and becoming like really fully aware of it, and so on and so forth. Now we have Twitter. Now we have, Instagram. Sure, we can delete, but people take screenshots. We are really in a stage where our communication is, even this right now, we're ultimately in a global platform, and we're ultimately now giving access to such a larger number of people than ever before. So it's kind of like, Marshall McLuhan, in the Global Village, where, you have to embrace this kind of notion of the global village now being a literal component of your world, and how it interacts with your work, and how you can't be a fucking asshole anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be like this fucking jerk, that like, in secret, like you're just like a horrible person, and like no one knows about it. And everybody's like, we'll continue to support that work, that person, that is all dissipating, because you have to be, you have to treat people with respect. You have to treat people. You have to, if you don't love your collectors, if you don't embrace them, if you don't listen to them, then what the fuck are you doing? Seriously. They provide your stage. They give you your livelihood. They celebrate you. And this is important as a new concept. And I think that in terms of communication, in terms of that direct, relationship, because the younger artists who are coming up in the NFT space, they see this as an essential component. They see all this as something that is not alien to them, or that they should adjust to. They see this as part of the process. And I love that, because it keeps them honest. It keeps them in line. You want to create a platform for yourself. You want to harness an audience. You want to build a global stage. Well, you can do it. And it's within your power. And people will look at you, they will listen to you, they will connect with you. And that is not to be taken for granted. It is a responsibility. It is important for an artist to really, I think, ultimately have a relationship. And this is how things have changed. The relationship between an artist and the collector used to be completely disconnected, because the gallery was the holding power of this relationship. And you had to have a relationship with the gallery to extend to the artist. Well, no, that's no longer necessary. And it's antiquated, really, because the opportunity for the artist to connect to their audience more directly is of benefit to the artist, because that is ultimately the power that the artist obtains, is this relationship to their collectors directly. And so, yes, we are in a new time, and in that regard, I embrace this new process and this new channels of communication, because it's ultimately building relationships, and it's building communities, and the purity is that much more potent because of the directness. And there isn't someone who's filtering that communication. I'm not going to have the gallery say to me, well, this is a hypothetical, but like in the kind of the construct that we might operate in, as a frame of comparison to where we're going, where we are, where we're going, the gallery may never pass on my communication to the artist, even though I have something really interesting to say about their work and how it relates to me and how I have, this reverence over the work and so on and so forth. They may never pass that on. Well, today, the artist can hear that directly from you. And that makes that's important for an artist, because an artist is often working in a vacuum. An artist is often creating and channeling their voice, and they don't know how it's going to be received. They don't know, it's important for the artist to receive that feedback and think, wow, okay, my work is important. People are connecting to my work. They love it. And like, that is important, like, it's not just about the money and about buying the art, because that's the other incredible aspect to all this, is that the level of communication that is now in place, it's no longer a handful of collectors buying that artist's work that artist must take into consideration and must listen to and must, bow down to or whatever. No. Now we're dealing with an audience where, there is value in someone who just appreciates the work and expressing that and in evangelizing it, throughout the internet. And there isn't necessarily a monetary component to it. It's literally enthusiasm. It's literally, I love this work, I'm going to tell everybody about it, and that's it. And that's a wonderful thing. Art needs that. Art needs to have people who are not, necessarily financially invested to carry on, a level of enthusiasm and a level of passion for art. They might not be able to, to participate financially at the moment. But if you have those people kindle their interest, one day in the future, they will be buying the work. And that's ultimately, extremely crucial to all of this. The galleries who have prioritized the way that they distribute work, the galleries who have, politicized the process, who have made it ultimately extremely difficult to even enter into collecting work that you're interested in. Well, now there's an alternative, a tremendous alternative. And this alternative is impacting, the traditional space. And again, like, the gates are open. This is not going in another direction. The direction that it's going in is what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, no, 1000%. I mean, it's incredibly exciting. And I think I love how you were able to highlight a lot of the ways in which this just creates a better experience that uplifts creativity as a whole. I mean, even one thing that has inspired me a lot too is like speaking with artists like a Jay Silva, who's a photographer that used to have to do tons of client work. But now that he has a mechanism to actually earn and provide his own livelihood just by creating and expressing himself creatively, and not necessarily have to like package up and sell himself as a service to a client, like it now unleashes just a new level of like creativity, and it becomes a very fun element of this whole innovation.
He's able to really express himself, and for his voice, his independent, his unique voice to really be represented, not shaped, not creatively directed, not formed into a box that it needs to fit into, and that's, again, like, really, it's almost a renaissance that we're talking about, and that's not a word that should be thrown around lightly, but really, I think that a renaissance is appropriate to really label the moment we're in.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still no, really fascinating to think about it from that perspective, and totally agree. I mean, it's a massive tidal shift in as far as how it's uplifting and empowering a whole new generation of artists and collectors. And in that vein of kind of like broader level empowerment, I mean, you were speaking to the fact that like the average buyer at some of the at like a Christie's is a senior citizen, and how it's kind of tapping into a younger audience. I mean, I know you got something coming up at ComplexCon, and I think ComplexCon is really interesting too, because part of our mission here at NFT Now is to foster mainstream adoption around NFTs. So we kind of looked at like the innovation diffusion graph, early adopters, early majority, and like one of the early adopter segments that I think still is relatively in its early stages with regards to adoption with NFTs is this kind of like hypebeast collector, chasing down the off-white drops, sneakers. And I mean, that's what ComplexCon is made of, as a happy participant who's gone to past ones. I think it'll be really interesting once we see that kind of customer segment or vertical really start to lean in and adopt this. And I think the fact that you got something coming up there, I think is just very well suited to a lot of just the evolution we're seeing in this market. Can you speak to what is coming and how you do think about adoption in these different verticals?
100%. So ComplexCon, I've participated in their event several times in different ways, curating various experiences. This year, I am curating alongside Legend, which is the platform that I'm chief curator for, that is actually an NFT art focused platform. We have been asked by ComplexCon to present 10 works in a just spectacular gallery that will be an activation at ComplexCon, and we will endeavor to really take advantage of this incredible level of interest and present the very best to an audience that I think will see what it is that is the true quality in this work, and really kind of convert a lot of sort of curious folks into NFT collectors. So Legend will do several things that will essentially introduce the ComplexCon attendees to NFTs in ultimately the most tangible way. We will give them a free NFT, and there will be other facets that are surprises that involve one of the very top NFT artists who will be providing a work in a certain capacity that I think will be very, 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 very exciting for the VIP attendees. And so these facets of presentation, these facets of using this venue, the platform that Legend is, which is essentially a highly curated, eco-friendly platform that started on the Wax blockchain, but now we have a bridge to Ethereum to really just address where the market is, really. Ethereum being such an important factor in NFTs. However, our background, our kind of origin is in the Wax blockchain, which is an alternative blockchain that is actually extremely eco-friendly and has been a blockchain of choice for the artists that we've worked with up until this point. And now the artists will have the option to mint on Wax or Ethereum, which is, I think, empowering the artist to have that choice. We have the opportunity to further educate. We have the opportunity to further evangelize this field, and the receptive audience that is ComplexCon. They're looking for what's new. They want what's next. They want to know where things are going. It's a fusion of art, fashion, and music, and I love that forum because these communities ultimately overlap. And it's not about pinpointing, it's about including. And so this very inclusive community that really ComplexCon has, assembled and really kind of sits in this kind of overlapping space, I think it's a perfect platform for expanding the knowledge base of NFTs, to really open people's eyes, to give them an experience, to essentially take away, this sort of technical, this kind of technical edge that NFTs still have, to kind of demystify the process of collecting NFTs, what they are, so that it's going to be a really great opportunity for us to connect with these overlapping communities, and to educate, and to really kind of supercharge, in a way, the interest level that is already there, and expose the community that will be there, potentially 10,000 attendees, to work that is at the cutting edge, the best artists, the most compelling examples of the work and the level of quality that this arena is providing. And we need that, because the crypto community has been extraordinary in building this field, in celebrating it, and amplifying it, in making it something that everyone should pay attention to. Now we need more folks outside of the crypto community to start to realize what all this is, and to grow far beyond, the crypto enthusiast, into, the art collector, and into other communities, that are related. NFTs are not limited to one particular sect, or one particular type of art. We're talking about, artists who are now, releasing or will release NFTs that are innovating music, that are innovating movies, that are innovating, every facet of popular, fashion, every aspect of culture, popular culture, high culture, where, haute couture. Everything is ultimately open to the contribution that an NFT medium can make. And it's really up to your imagination as to where you're going to take this. And we want, not only people to appreciate the work, but we want to inspire. We want artists who are attending ComplexCon to look at the work and think, where can I take this? How can I build on this? How can I, channel myself through this and take my work into another stage? And that's really, kind of what this opportunity is to kind of just really address all of this.
That's amazing, man. And, really excited to see everything you just outlined come to life. Very grateful that we have someone like you advocating for NFTs. It's a nascent space as we begin to see more mainstream adoption. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and, really looking forward to all the initiatives you have in the works.
I appreciate that, guys. It's my pleasure to speak with you. As you can tell, I could go on forever.
So could we. So.
Amazing. Thank you, Ronnie. We'll see you soon, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, gentlemen.
Man, well, that was an incredible episode. I'm super excited. And I think you even said it too, coming towards the closing, but just having people like him in the space pushing this forward, like he knows how to float well and is very well respected in multiple industries, be it culture, art, collectors, traditional art world, more forward-thinking contemporary art worlds, and now the NFT world. So really loved his perspectives, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I loved hearing his thoughts about, having seen the rise of Kaws and how an artist like that, really an outsider, at the time that he rose, was able to sort of go to the forefront and bypass some of the normal gatekeepers and sort of like hurdles, and to then sort of extrapolate that experience to a seismic shift in what this industry landscape looks like. It was just a really unique perspective, one that we haven't had on the podcast, I don't think, before, and so it was really great to give him the space to share that. I just loved also hearing his perspective as a collector on how NFTs break down the barriers between artists and their collector base. It's something that we hear about a lot as an abstract concept, but I feel like he was able to really give voice to it in a way that resonated with me.
Yeah, 1000%. Well, grateful for Ronnie, grateful for you, Matt, grateful for everybody listening, tuning in. We'll be back next week and really appreciate the support.
Grateful for you too, Sam.
Oh, stop it, Matt.